Hello, fellow historians. My name is Brian Albrecht, and for this discussion board post, I am discussing warfare and religion, a unique and interesting convergence. Now, I chose to use two different theses from ProQuest. The first one was Holy Warriors and Bellicose Bishops, the Church, and Warfare in Early Medieval Germany. And Thutmose of Marsburg's views on clerical warfare. Now, this is a subject that I do happen to know a little bit about, being primarily a military type of historian. So, medieval warfare is something that I do know a little bit about. I mean, I have taken courses at other universities in this specific subject during my undergraduate days. Um, so let's just go straight into the discussion. You know, the first part of it, I think that is weird, or not really weird, but is an interesting part of the convergence, is that clerical leaders in the Middle Ages, medieval time frame, also known as Middle Ages, were not only spiritual leaders, they were also secular leaders, which means they governed lands on behalf of the potentate, king, the crown prince, prince regent, or whoever ruled the land that they were in, that their dioceses were contained in. Now, that brings a very unique perspective because as a secular lord, they had to provide troops, raise troops, and more than often or not, had to lead those troops in battle. So that alone is almost a contradiction in terms. How can you be a spiritual leader and a battlefield leader? But is it really that much of a contradiction? After all, in the Bible, especially in the Old Testament, it says that thou shalt not kill. But it actually is thou shalt not commit murder. Because killing in the name of a just war is allowed in the Bible underneath the Old Testament rules. Now, Jesus has taught that you must love your neighbor and you must treat your neighbor as you would want them to treat you. And that a world of love would not be filled with warfare. But as we know, Jesus was a perfect being. His world is a perfect world. We, as humans, are not perfect. And our world that we live in is also not perfect. So, that broaches into the second part of the subject of my discussion, the contradictions of killing and peace. Now, there were instances of some secular spiritual leaders who directly opposed this levying of troops and leading of them in battle. And yet there are others who embraced it. So the church itself at that time was not set on who or what exactly was the way that was to be done. It was up to the individual in charge of that diocese to search their heart and decide which way to go. Which also kind of brings up another interesting point. I'm sure you historians have heard of the Code of Chivalry. Well, the Code of Chivalry was not really a code. It was loosely based off of two tenets that the church put out. I have to get my book here for a minute. The first was the peace of God in 989 AD, where they threatened spiritual sanctions against the aristocracy. Now, in the 11th century, the 1000s, as some people call it, they came out with another one, the truth of God, where they asked the aristocracy, especially the mounted aristocracy, to forego the pleasures of war on certain days of the week in observance of the Lord. Along with if they failed, then the spiritual sanctions would happen. Now, the peace of God and the truth of God were meant to really protect the church, the clergymen, its lands, its income from the aristocracy, who at the time could be seen as, well, bloodthirsty and warmongering because they wanted more. And we all know that during the Middle Ages, or the medieval time frame, religion was the bedrock. The salvation of the souls was everything to them. Not only this is seen in many different ways. You know, the Crusades, for instance, where when Jerusalem was captured by King Richard the Lionhearted, and he demanded the true cross. Now, many people would wonder why there would be this demand for the true cross. Well, we all know wood absorbs things. When you get wood wet, it absorbs the water. That is why it is sealed. Wood absorbs the paint that we put on it. So thus, as a Christian totem, something that would be used by the church in religious prosecution of war, yet another interesting convergence that it would have absorbed the blood of Christ and would thus be imbued with his grace and his power. So thus, the Crusades were sanctioned by the church. The main thing that this discussion can be is when many people look at the convergence of war and religion, even in popular culture, okay, we can look at the television show Vikings that was on the History Channel. There we see a bishop, an English bishop, fighting, visual, actually fighting against Vikings. Where when you see them earlier in the show raid Lindisfarne, the monks themselves do not offer any resistance. And as we see time go on, we see this difference there. I mean, if you remember the movie, The Agony and the Ecstasy, we see the Pope in defending of the Papal States on his deathbed after being wounded in battle while leading the Papal troops. There is, you know, many instances. Um, Now, you could also break down warfare into two different things, apart from religious aspect of it, to greed, which is one of the baser human elements, which religion does try to control. I'll say that. Um, there's a Swedish band called Sabaton that has a song called Lifetime of War, where in it they say they have one line that says, religion and greed caused millions to bleed. It is not necessarily saying that the Christian religion, which we know is an expansionist religion, along with Islam. But it is a unique convergence of religion and warfare. Because if you look at the military nowadays and throughout time, chaplains, preachers back in the day, if you look at the Civil War times and earlier, but religious members did not fight. They were on the front lines with the troops, but they were there for spiritual benefit, not to contribute to combat. They were deliberately unarmed, which shows a shift in the way that religion and warfare was seen as opposed to as was during the medieval time frame. I know it seems like I may be a little bit rambling or going off topic a little bit on a tangent, but you have to forgive me for that. As I am looking at my notes and as I am talking to you, ideas pop in and they are something that needed to be said. So I hope you all can understand where I come from. And if I look a little bit rough between family and my day job, so I have been working a lot of long hours and doing the research for this course, along with all that reading, along with having to deal with family issues and just spending time with my family. So I hope you can understand that. I am talking to you like I would be talking to anybody in a normal conversation, which is what a discussion board is. Sometimes tangents are involved, sometimes they're not. I thank you for watching me, listening to me, entertaining any of the ideas that I might have given you. And I do look forward to your remarks, whether they're good or bad. I do accept criticism, as we all should. Thank you, and goodbye.